Okay, this might seem a little out of left field and unrelated to my normal content on this channel, but the new SIG M5 rifle that's been adopted by the Army, I've been looking into it a bit. I think that this is probably the most ridiculous boondoggle since the F-35. The military-industrial complex has really outdone themselves this time. The new SIG M5 rifle that is going to be issued to every American soldier pretty much now. It is the standard infantry rifle moving forward of the United States Army. The MSRP on that rifle is $8,000. For that $8,000, what do you get? You get what is essentially a hybrid AR-10, AR-16 rifle based on the SIG MCX. I don't have to get too much into the weeds on that. I don't want to explain the histories of all these rifle systems. But you have something that is, take my word for it, a pretty well-developed and well-established operating system, for lack of a better term, for this rifle. And it fires a 6.8 millimeter cartridge, which in and of itself, I think that's probably a good idea. I think that the 6.5 to the 7 millimeter range is a good compromise between, the 5.56 and the 308 cartridges that the Army uses now. If they want to simplify, have one, go, split the difference, go in the middle. 7 millimeter Mauser and 6.5 by 55 Swede. Those were great rounds back in the day. Something a little more modern that fits in a smaller case that has a similar ballistics. I get that. I'm all for that. And they are putting it in a rifle that has pretty proven technology. It's based off of the fundamentally based off of the, AR-10, AR-16, or if you want to put it in the smaller caliber terms, AR-15, AR-18 sort of hybridization. Has a very similar manual of arms to the current M4s. Which are, for those of you who don't know, M4 is what the military calls an AR-15. So it should make it for an easy transition for the troops. It's just a little bigger gun, it's a little bulkier. Oh, and it weighs 14 friggin' pounds. 14 pounds! I was trying to save this for a little later, but I mean, that number blew me away. For comparison, a M14, which is a dinosaur of a rifle. It was based off of the U.S.'s World War II military rifle. They tried to bring it, into the Cold War by adding a 20-round box magazine. It's pretty much the same frame size, if you like, as this gun. It shoots the 308, which is in the same class. It's a full power rifle cartridge, just like what this new SIG gun shoots. It has a longer barrel than this SIG. This SIG has a 13-inch barrel. Weighs in at 14 pounds without a scope. The M14, along with the FAL, and I think maybe even the G3, although the G3s are a bit heavier, I think. It might be a little over 10 pounds. But those two, the M14 and the FAL, under 10 pounds. And they have longer barrels. Substantially longer barrels. And this little stubby SIG that somehow rings in at $8,000 weighs more. And by the way that it was described by people who've shot it, like Ian McCollum, who, for those, I'll link to his videos, his 2 videos on the rifle in the description. He seemed to like it, but it's front heavy, which is not something that's very pleasant. Makes it a little more difficult to shoot. Oh, and did I mention, it's $8,000. If you wanted to go out and pay retail, now they're a little hard to find right now because guns are in short supply, but if you wanted to just go out and buy because keep in mind, this is not like a marksman's rifle, this is not a sniper rifle, this is not like a top shelf, super high precision rifle. This is just the thing that you hand out to the grunts. This is what you give to the guys who go in the Army or the guys who are getting drafted. You hand them a rifle, you say, okay, go out and fight some Iraqis. That's what this rifle's purpose is. It's the every man's rifle. in the military, in the Army right now. It's not been adopted by the Marines. That's the rifle that MSRP. Now, the military probably, you would think, oh, well, they'll probably get a volume discount. Actually, the way the military usually works, they'll probably pay more than retail for this rifle. They'll find ways to pad it by adding extra features, supposedly, that will just inflate the cost and not really the effectiveness. But let's just go off the premise now that it's an $8,000 rifle, because that's pretty much what it is. For $1,550, you could go out and buy a sort of low tier, bottom tier FAL, made by a company called DSA Arms. I think they're in Minnesota or something. And so what's that, like 5 times cheaper for what is effectively the same classic gun that will weigh 50% less, or well, maybe not 50% less, we would say 33% less. The SIG weighs about 50% more than an FAL or an M14. M14s, let's rule that out because just as a comparison, because it is more of an old world type of rifle in how it's manufactured, and also in how it handles. It doesn't have a pistol grip like an AR or an FAL. The way that the safety works is a little different. It's a different feeling gun. So it's not directly comparable. It's not as direct of a comparison as, let's say, the FAL. So let's just talk about the FAL. That gun, $1,550, weighs 33% less. Shoots the same, same class of round. Only downside is it has a slightly longer profile. It's going to have a longer overall length because it has a longer barrel. Oh, did I mention it's 5 times cheaper, even at the retail price? We're talking retail prices here. Other than that, there's nothing that this new rifle has going on for it. They've put all these years of development. They had this big competition. It's been decades. They've been trying to find, what are we going to do? What are we going to replace the AR-15 with in the military? They've been trying to come up with something different for a long time because, the AR-15 kind of shoots this stubby little round. And so in the machine guns, they run bigger ammo, and then the rifles, they run smaller, and so then you have 2 different types of ammo at a minimum. Of course, there's other more specialty weapons that use more, even less common ammo, like 338 Lapua. And so they're trying to simplify their logistics. That's admirable. And in theory, it would be cheaper to have 1 type of ammunition instead of trying to juggle 2 types of ammunition. And what they came up with was a rifle that is not anything really new or different. It just costs 5 times as much as a comparable rifle that could have gotten the job done just as easily. Now, the only real wild card here that I haven't mentioned is the fact that the round, SIG, of course, had to develop a new proprietary round. They couldn't have used any of the number of 6.5 to 7 millimeter caliber rounds that would have fit in these magazines and in this size gun. They wanted to develop their own. And I guess the goal of this ammunition was to penetrate new types of Chinese and also Russian body armor. But they were also trying to shoot it out of a really, really short barrel, a 13-inch barrel. And so they had to, develop it to run up to 80,000 PSI. And so yes, off the shelf, if you just took a standard FAL and made a barrel that is the correct size, and chambering for this round, I guess you could blow it up, but physically this rifle does not seem to be built any tougher than any other rifle in its class. It seems that the case itself is how it handles the higher pressure. So I don't even think that this type of ammunition going into this gun justifies the 5x price increase over really what it should cost. And you know what I'll do? I'll link to SIG's page where they list the MSRP for this rifle. I will list the page with the rifle that I'm comparing it to, the FAL, that costs like $1,550, which again, they're not in stock, but I'm saying if this is what the retail price is, the Army could go out and find a contractor to build them rifles like this for, I don't know, $1,200 a unit or something that they're buying, or maybe $1,000. Maybe the Army could get, 33% off if they're buying bulk. Who knows? I'm sure the Army could get them made pretty darn cheap if you're able to buy them retail for $1,550. And yes, they could have those rifles made to shoot this same round if they wanted, this 80,000 PSI round, because, the problem is not really blowing up the gun, it's blowing up the case and blowing up and wearing out the barrel. And so most of the time, according to Ian McCollum, these rifles will actually be shooting a lower pressure loading of this same round. And so the only real innovation here is in the design of the case itself. It's a bimetal case. It's brass and stainless steel. Which, why stainless? I mean, that just seems a little ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know enough about metallurgy to say that they absolutely could have just done it with with non-stainless steel, with regular steel, which is much cheaper. Maybe just a higher carbon steel. And as we know, this low carbon steel that the Ruskies make for their ammo cases is significantly cheaper than brass. And so part of me, even though I don't want to say for sure because I don't know, I feel like they could have developed a much cheaper case for this, but let's leave that aside. But the innovation here is in the ammunition. It's not in the gun itself. Yet the gun costs $8,000. So let's say that the Army gets a discount and they're $6,000. That's still, what, 4 times the price of what the rifle really should be for what it is? And of course, it's 14 friggin' pounds in front heavy. I've shot an FAL before. They balance very, very well in my experience. I don't own an FAL or anything like that, so I haven't shot them extensively. So maybe if I held this SIG next to an FAL, maybe the difference wouldn't be that bad. And again, because I'm having to go off of Ian McCollum's own opinion of the gun. He said it was front heavy. It looks like it'd be really friggin' front heavy because it's got this because despite having a short barrel, you would think, oh well, it's a shorter barrel, it should weigh less. No, because it's a very, very heavy barrel. Presumably, I guess it has to be a heavier barrel because of the higher pressure case. So perhaps in this theoretical 277 SIG FAL rifle, perhaps it would come out to being heavier, or as heavy as this MCX Spear, which is what SIG calls the M5, because it would have to be a heavier barrel. But if you were running a longer barrel, you wouldn't need to run as high pressure of a case. You could run a lower pressure case with the longer barrel because you wouldn't need to get the round up to speed as quickly. It would have more. It would have more time to in the rifle, in the barrel to accelerate. But again, these are tweaks that you would make to the design in customizing it to this application. This might inflate the price a little bit if you're putting a heavier barrel on a gun that had a light barrel. Maybe the price would rise from like $1,550 retail to like $1,800 retail. But it's not going to inflate all the way to $8,000. If I were in Congress, this would be a pretty easy issue to make a stink about, to justify trying to block the National Defense Authorization Act. Because why the hell do we need to give more money to the military? We should be cutting their budget if they have enough money to spend $8,000 per soldier on something like a rifle. Rifles aren't even that useful in war, for the most part. And again, I'm not, I don't want to talk like I'm some military expert, but I'm just, I don't think that's a very controversial statement. I think that's the generally accepted fact that, people probably militaries probably focus way too much on their infantry rifles but it's a symbol. It's what you think of when you look at a soldier. Every soldier has one, and so it's something that gets a lot of thought put into it. But things like artillery and howitzers and the Air Force play a much more significant role in fighting battles and winning wars. Weapons that aren't as sexy, like ground attack aircraft. Yet, our obviously not cash-strapped military is willing to blow $8,000 times however many soldiers they have, plus reserves and plus spares and all the parts and everything. $8,000 a piece for these silly little rifles to do a job that could have been done by a $1,500 rifle. So perhaps a lot of you all have already turned off because this is a very boring video for you. You have no interest in the minutia of what particular weapons are being adopted by the U.S. military. But to me, this is just one of those things that, like, I see the numbers on paper, and it really a light bulb goes off in my head. It's something that I already knew about the military-industrial complex and how they waste money. But it's one thing to talk about those things academically, the concept of the military just blowing money on crap that it doesn't need, and then to look at something and objectively, go through the math in your head and go, oh my God, they're spending 5 times what they should, even assuming that what they're buying is is the correct decision, that going in this direction and pursuing, this type of a weapon. And arming the troops, in this particular way, even assuming that all that they've got the right idea there, they're spending 5 times what they should. And I guarantee you that the price per round on this new SIG ammo is going to be significantly more than probably the price of one 5.56 round and one 308 round put together, when in reality it should cost no more than a single 308 round. So, with that said, I strongly encourage all of you to write your congressman and perhaps, look into this yourself and if you can, maybe get a meeting with them in their office. That probably never happens these days, but, leave messages on there. Just say, this is such an obvious example of why the military doesn't deserve another dime. You need to cut their budgets. They don't deserve it. They're blowing money on stupid crap. If they're spending, this is just one thing that we can think through. Think of everything else that they're paying 5 to 10 times more for than they should. Even assuming that everything they're buying is stuff that they need, which they don't. It's just infuriating. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.